Ahem, hello, and welcome to my spooky little special. So, as you know, it's spooky month, and that means that I've decided to read some scary stories from random people, and one of my own. So, are you ready? It's not like I can tell anyway. Ouija board knocks back. In high school, my friends and I were messing around with an Ouija board one night. We had done it before, and nothing remarkable had ever happened. We usually did to try to scare each other or our girlfriends. We all thought it was a joke. That night there was no one else home except the seven of us, and we were all together around the board. One of the girls wanted to try it. She had never done it before. This time was different. The board misspelled some words the same very way. The same way every time. I'm so sorry. It gave answers that seemed really historically accurate for a town. Things we neither knew or cared about. Long story short, the spirit claimed it was a 10-year-old boy who had died on the property in the 1800s and was buried there to an unmarked grave. My friend's house was on a farm in the edge of town. We were all a little freaked out because the board had never been so detailed and consistent before. However, we were still skeptical and were all assuming one of us was trying to scare the rest. Finally, my friend asked if the spirit could do something to prove it was there with us. It went yes, and then spelled out Knock. Then the planchette, or however you pronounce that, stopped moving. We all just stared at it silently, and then there was a rap 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 on the window right next to us. The lights were on outside, and there was absolutely no one out there. We never touched that effing board again. Phantom alarms and footsteps. When I was in high school, I had a lot of these experiences. At the house my dad lived in at the time, it was very old, built in the early 1800s. There were plenty of times I'd be sitting in the living room and distinctly hear the cabinets opening and closing in the kitchen. It was just me and my dad that lived in the house, and you could clearly see when his bedroom door was shut and he was asleep, but still hear it. Normally my dad worked 7 to 3 hours, but occasionally worked a PM or overnight shift. One night he was working until 11. I was 17 at the time. Around 8 or so, I was sitting in my room playing Borderlands, and I think I hear footsteps coming from the living room, which was really close to my bedroom, and assume my dad's home early. Go back to playing Borderlands. I keep hearing the steps, so I pause the game and listen. And the footsteps are just slowly pacing back and forth between the living room and the kitchen, in a steady rhythm. I laid in bed scared shitless, and actually counted the steps. Every time it took 15 paces to the living room, 15 paces back to the kitchen. Needless to say, I did not sleep that night. Had another situation at my mom's house about 2 years prior to this. Out of nowhere, my alarm clock would go off at midnight every night. I assumed it was busted and got rid of it. Fast forward 2 years, my mom gets another brand new alarm clock for my room. Also, when I was 17, suddenly, alarm goes off at midnight. I thought nothing of it. Turned it off. Happened again the next night. And then my sister pointed out the old one I had that did it too. So I checked in, made sure no alarms were set. Double checked at 11:56. Sure enough, 4 minutes later, my alarm goes off. Freaked out and threw it out. The next night, my dad's night to have me, I had a buddy of mine over, and my dad was working that night. He left for work around 2 a.m., and my friend had brought over an iPod dock to listen to music on. Didn't have the clock set or anything. My friend knew nothing of the last couple nights, so I knew he wasn't just messing with me. So about 2 minutes after my dad leaves, we hear an alarm clock coming from my room. I went in, and you know how if you just plug in a clock without setting it, the numbers just blink on and off? Well, it was doing that as soon as I picked it up. The clock set itself to 12 a.m., and then just turned off by itself. I've been flying for almost 30 hours, and the flight attendants won't stop crying. 30 hours ago, I hopped on a late flight from New York heading to Los Angeles. After boarding, I saw that I had an entire row to myself. Takeoff passed without incident, and soon I was stretched out for a nap across the row. I slept for a few hours, I don't know how long, but I woke up to some severe turbulence. It's possible that the lights in the cabin went off for a moment, but I was so disoriented that it's really hard to say. I checked my phone to see that it was 4:03 a.m., which I figured gave me about an hour until we landed. When I looked out my window, I was shocked to see nothing but wide open ocean. My jaw dropped. There's absolutely no ocean between New York and Los Angeles. I hit the button to call the flight attendant, spent a few minutes racking my brain for a lake that could have been possibly big enough to explain what I was seeing. I jumped when the flight attendant flipped off the light. She was grinning from ear to ear and tears pouring down her cheeks. "How can I help you, sir?" she asked. I froze for a moment at her reaction before deciding to ask my question. "Where are we? Why does it look like we're flying over the ocean?" She wiped her cheeks to clear the tears, still grinning widely. "Sir, we'll be landing in about an hour." Okay, thank you," I said. After she left, I checked the clock on my phone again. 4:03 a.m. blinked back at me. It hadn't changed. I had to have been waiting for my call light on for at least 5 minutes. How was it possible that it hadn't changed at all? I opened my laptop and saw it too displayed 4:03 a.m. I pulled out my phone, started a stopwatch in the app. Spent the next 2 hours looking back and forth between the clocks, waiting for them to change. They never did. I tapped the shoulder of an older woman sitting in the row ahead of me. She looked back, an annoyed expression across her face. "Yes?" she asked. "Do you know how long it'll be until we land?" I asked. She narrowed her eyes. "The flight attendant said it would be about another hour." I shook my head in confusion. The flight attendant? We talked almost 2 hours ago. We should have landed already. She stared at me as if I was crazy. I was going to continue and try to convince her, but I felt a hand on my shoulder. I spun to see a male flight attendant grinning at me, tears pinching off his cheeks onto my shoulder. "Sir, I'm going to ask you to calm down, or I'll be calling the captain." I told him that wouldn't be necessary, and I sat back. He removed his hand and stepped away. The flight attendants continued to stop for every few hours, offering meals. My stopwatch continued to tick up, and now telling me that I've been on the plane for more than 30 hours. I explored all over the coach and tried talking to some of our other passengers, but they've all told me that they're expecting to land in an hour or so. Around 3 hours ago, I tried getting into first class and made it past the curtain, but was escorted back by 2 grinning flight attendants. Their grip on my arms were like iron. "Sir, the seatbelt sign is on," one said. "Please remain in your seat with your buckle fastened. We'll be landing in about an hour." I'd just about given up hope when a woman came down the aisle dressed in a business suit. She didn't look at me or slow down, but she dropped a piece of paper onto my tray as she made her way to the bathrooms at the back of the plane. I shot a look around before unrolling it. It said, "Are you stuck too?" I pulled out a pen and wrote, "Yes, it's been 30 hours. I folded the scrap paper up and I set it on the tray closest to the aisle. She left the bathroom and picked it up as she passed. It's been 20 minutes since then. I don't know why, but I don't think the flight attendants would like it if they knew we were talking. It doesn't matter. I have to do something. I'll update you on whatever happens next." Now it's time for one of my stories. I haven't really told this one to anyone, so consider yourself some of the first. This is very short and simple, but I'll never forget it. One night I was lying in my bed sleeping. I was in a different room at the time, and I had this bed tent that I kept unzipped so I wouldn't have the hassle in early mornings as I was waking up at 5 a.m. to get ready for the day before my dad got up to get ready for work. I'd say it was around that time for 5 years, and maybe still today. I was having a yearly dream that I would always forget about until I had it. Anyway, that doesn't matter as much as what happened when I woke up for a second. I opened my eyes to see a scary-looking charcoal black smiling face with long hair staring at me. Had a grinning, creepy smile looking at me, as if I'm not sure. I covered my head with a blanket and shortly after fell back asleep, forgetting the thing for a day or so, I think. Quite the interesting day, I gotta say that much. Very short and simple, but I will never forget. Thank you for watching the video. It was really fun to make. I hope you have the most amazing day, afternoon, or night, and stay spooky.